Last month, I was reading through the book of Ecclesiastes, and there was one specific verse in chapter 1 that really stuck out to me more than it ever had, because I've read through Ecclesiastes multiple times before, but this verse never really grabbed me the same way it did this past time. And I just wanted to share this verse with you guys and try to dissect it a little bit because I think there's a lot of truth in it. And it can be found in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 18 says, "For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow." This famously written by King Solomon, who is regarded to be one of the wisest men in all of human history. So he is certainly qualified to write a verse such as this. But not only is this verse applicable to his life and the time in which it was written, I think it is also applicable to our lives in the modern day with everything that we deal with social media and the internet and the seemingly unlimited amount of information that is out there. I think that this verse is very relevant and offers insight into how we go about increasing our own knowledge in the modern day. And as I've been thinking about this verse over the last month, I've been kind of asking myself a couple different questions, and I'm going to try to answer those questions, not only for myself, but also for you guys as well, so we can kind of go through it together. But the first question is, why does knowledge increase sorrow? And I think the best thing that I could do is use my own experience as an example. Whenever I go to make a video or create content, I usually have an initial thread that I am pulling on. Maybe somebody says something to me, or I see something on Instagram or on YouTube that triggers a thought, and that thought triggers a bunch of other thoughts. And I slowly start to put together, if I was going to make a video, this is what it's going to sound like, or this is the argument I'm going to make, and try to put the pieces together that way. But I can't create content just on my thoughts alone. It needs more than that. It needs more meat than that. And so a lot of times what I will do is I'll take that initial thought and then I will spend some time doing some research. So I need articles, I need info, I need accurate interpretations of historical events, I need data, I need statistics. I need all of these different things to try and help build an argument or a video. And sometimes I find the information that lifts up my view of a particular topic, or it lifts up the argument I am trying to make. But there are also times where the information that I find flies in direct opposition to my initial perception, or it flies in opposition to the argument that I am trying to make. And that can be a real gut punch sometimes, because that either means that you have to do more research to strengthen your argument even more, or sometimes you just have to admit that you were wrong and move on to a different topic or move on to a different subject. And you have to change the way that you think about a particular circumstance. And that can be difficult. And it is somewhat of a self-reflection, because you're viewing the world through a particular lens and you have a perception of what everything is, but perception doesn't always line up with reality, and that can kind of shatter the mirror that you are looking in. And the reason why knowledge increases sorrow is because you have to be constantly willing to tear yourself down in order to make room for the new person that you now are, that has more information, that has a better understanding, that has better knowledge of what is really going on. And like self-reflection, that's a painful thing to go through. That's a painful circumstance to be in. If you're constantly putting yourself in a situation where you could be proven wrong, or you're going to have to change the way you think about things. That's a tough thing to do, not only emotionally, just intellectually. You have to consistently be willing to tear yourself down, and that can be very, very hard. And I also think that sometimes it's like that saying, ignorance is bliss. You don't really know how much is going on. I remember when I was a teenager, I wasn't really interested in politics at all. And so I kind of stayed away from it. Like, I don't want to think about all that. I don't want all of that dragging down my mind and making me upset and discouraged and all these different things. But I eventually came around the time of the 2016 election, because that was the first time I was allowed to vote. So I wanted to be a little bit educated. I probably wasn't as educated as I should have been, but I didn't want to go into it completely blind. So I started to slowly read more and listen to political commentary on Trump and Hillary and all the different things going on in the world. And once you start to expand the amount of knowledge that you have, you realize, one, there are a lot more problems in the world than you initially thought there were. And two, those problems are infinitely more complex than you could have imagined. And so there is a certain amount of pessimism that comes with increasing the knowledge that you have, because you learn that these problems aren't just going away. It takes a lot of work and a lot of thought to make tiny little baby steps when it comes to solving any of these problems. And sometimes the world just seems so big, you don't really feel like that you can have an impact in any kind of significant way. And so that's a burden. That's a burden that you have put upon your shoulders beyond the self-reflection part of it. You've also placed a burden of knowledge upon yourself. Can I really make a difference? Does what I say matter? Does what I do matter? Sometimes things just get so big, you can feel discouraged. And I think that's one of the deeper truths for this verse here in Ecclesiastes. But I also think that it comes with a warning, which I guess would be a secondary truth. It is not only true that knowledge increases sorrow, but that also, I feel like, begs the question, is all knowledge good? Is all knowledge profitable? And one of the problems that we see with social media is that young people have a very hard time balancing and compartmentalizing all of the things and all of the information that they have access to. It's just an unlimited source of information. Now, the problem is that if you are interested in something, if you have a hobby or there's something that you want to study up on or do research on, you can, especially on social media, you can instantly find thousands of people that are infinitely better than you at every single thing. It doesn't matter what it is: sports, fashion, engineering, creating content. It does not matter. You can find it seems like an infinite amount. It's not, but it seems like an overwhelming amount of people that are better than you at every single thing. You can find people that have more cars than you. You can find people that are better looking than you. You can find people that are more wealthy than you. And is that kind of information good? Is that kind of knowledge good? And I would say that it really depends on how you apply the knowledge. It's not just having the knowledge, it is also how you apply that knowledge to your life. With young people, they have seemingly an unbridled amount of time to spend on social media. And there are, whether it's the fault of the parents, they probably spend too much time on it. And so they don't know how to apply that knowledge to their life. It's not necessarily that they have the knowledge, it's that they don't know how to use it. And so all they see is people that are prettier than them, that are stronger than them, that are more jacked than them, that are more successful and wealthy than them. And that is a burden, right? That's what it talks about. Knowledge increaseth sorrow. If you've increased the burden on your mind, on your happiness, on your satisfaction with life, you've created kind of a sorrowful situation for yourself. And as you get a little bit older, I think, and social media can still have a negative impact on adults, but as you get older, you are more able to compartmentalize the information from the outcome. Like, you can kind of separate the two. You're not necessarily comparing yourself to the person that is wealthy, but you want to take the information that they have and the strategy that they have and try to implement it in your own life, right? I'm not looking at this super buff guy thinking that, oh man, I wish I could be him, or it's just unattainable for me. I can say, where did you start out? Where did this guy start out? And there will be a lot of investors, successful businessmen, people that work out a lot. They'll give you tutorials on how to start out with the basics, and then you can start building a foundation from there. So is all knowledge good? Is knowledge good? Generally speaking, yeah, I would say that knowledge is good, but it does matter how we apply that knowledge to our own life. And as for my recommendation, how do you find knowledge? How do you gain knowledge? It's really whatever works for you. Me, I like to listen to podcasts. I like to listen to political commentary. At any given time, I started a save later. There's like a save later file on my YouTube, not my podcast one, but like the personal one that I use just to listen to stuff. I have like 10 hours of political content on there that I slowly just listen through. So I'm at the gym, I'm at home, I'm doing something, just chilling. I'm listening to content. I'm listening to people talk about certain situations or philosophy or various different things. And I like to try and constantly feed my mind with information and with good arguments and with stable arguments. And some people like to read. I probably don't read near enough, but I usually like getting my information through other people creating content and people offering information that way. And initially, I didn't even start out listening to political content. Before I was listening to political talk shows, I was listening to Fox Sports 1 and Colin Cowherd and all those guys. I still listen to them occasionally, but that's where I started. I think it was around the time that the Warriors were really good. And so I kept on hearing like Steph Curry, what's the deal with Steph Curry? So I just started out listening to them. And from there, I started to, I think it was the Joe Rogan podcast, and he would have a bunch of different people on. He would have scientists and people like Ben Shapiro and others like that. And it was just a good place to go and listen to people from all different backgrounds talk about various different things. And so that kind of exploded into just a ton of different outlets and a ton of different content creators. And right now, I would say some of my favorite, excuse me, some of my more favorite, I listen to Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson fairly often. I like listening to Destiny. Destiny is a liberal streamer. I think he streams on Twitch or on YouTube a lot. He streams on YouTube. I watch his videos. I like the format. It's really interesting to see him go through debates, and then he'll actually show you his process of going through retaining information and doing research. So it's something different and it's unique, but I think it's really cool. So I like listening to him as well. I love Dr. John Lennox, who is not only a renowned scientist, but also a renowned Christian apologist as well. And I like to listen to him debate atheists on the existence of God and the morality of God. On the other side, I like listening to Sam Harris. I don't really agree with Sam Harris on a lot of different things. I do think in some ways he is more straightforward and honest. I think he has a more realistic application of how atheism affects our society and culture. I think his view on that is more realistic than some of these other atheists that you could listen to. So I like listening to him. You can really go and find someone that resonates with you. You don't have to listen to, those are a lot of bigger names, I guess, but you don't necessarily have to listen to those people. Go and find what suits you. If you're into fashion, go listen to people who create content on fashion. If you're into politics, listen to people who create content on politics. And it is also very nice. There is kind of a disconnect when it comes to watching videos that are produced by other people. You're not face to face, you're not having a discussion or a debate with them, which I think is probably more profitable in the end. It's always good to be able to sit down and actually apply the knowledge that you have in an actual conversation with a person that's sitting across from you. Surround yourself by people that have more knowledge in a particular area. And I remember when I used to go to a gym. It was actually the famous Hoosier gym in Indiana, where the movie Hoosiers, it's based upon that. And I think some of the movie was filmed there. But I would go to that gym every Monday night and play basketball, and there would be anywhere from 10 to 14 guys. So you would have to pick up, whatever. But I remember when I started going there, I wasn't very good. I would always like rate myself or rank myself in a weird way. I would say to myself, tonight, I was like, out of the 14 guys that were there, I was like the 13th best guy, And if you have played a lot of pickup basketball, even if it isn't said, you kind of get the feeling of who the worst guy on the court is. And I think sometimes if you're the worst guy on the court, and I hated that feeling. I hated that feeling more than anything. And so I would, in between the Mondays throughout the week, I would go to the gym. Maybe I'd do some cardio or I'd work out a little bit, but I would just shoot around by myself. I would get some reps in because I hated that feeling. And over the span of a few months, gradually over time, I became more consistent and I became a better player. All of those guys were better than me initially, but as I worked and surrounded myself with players that were better than me, I slowly started to approach their level. And so I would walk out of the gym and I'd be like, I was like the 10th best guy. I was like the 8th best guy. And pretty soon I was like, I'm like the 5th best guy. And every once in a while, every once in a blue moon, you would have a really good night. I would get hot and knock down a bunch of shots. And I'm like, I think I was like the best guy on the court. I think I was like the best shooter out there. And that was always a really good feeling. But, you kind of had to go through the grind and the shame of not being on the same level. But if you are willing to stick it out, again, it's that process of tearing yourself down and rebuilding yourself with new knowledge. If you're willing to do that, if you're willing to put yourself out there and have discussions with people that are smarter than you, they know more than you, they have more experience than you, if you're willing to put in the work and put yourself out there, I think you'll see some changes. But I just wanted to share that. I don't think I've shared a specific Bible verse on the podcast before, but I think it was about time that I did, just because it's had a positive impact on my life, and I don't want to leave that positive impact out of my content. So I hope you guys enjoyed that little explanation, and I hope that you are encouraged to pursue knowledge, because even though it's difficult, and we kind of talked about it earlier, even though it's difficult and there is a burden to obtaining more knowledge, ultimately I do think it is worth it, especially if you're looking to obtain knowledge in something that you're interested in. It always makes it easier. If you're interested in a particular thing, it always makes it easier to gain more knowledge in that particular area. So go read the book of Ecclesiastes. Go read Ecclesiastes chapter 1. And hopefully you can find some encouragement there and on this video.